The end of the project. And funny enough, I'm shooting the intro to the video at the end of all of the work because we just finished doing the free motion machine quilting on the easiest English paper piecing project ever. This is the one I did all by machine using the fusible interfacing to bond the edges of the hexagons and put this together. Actually started in the vehicle out on a camping trip. And I know you've enjoyed the process, but so many of you were concerned about what would happen when it came time to free motion machine quilt this. So as I was putting it on the long arm over the weekend, I was just getting ready to have some fun with the project. And it was going so well, and I realized I was learning so much. I really wanted to bring you all together with me. So I pulled out the iPhone out of the pocket. So the footage is a little shaky. I apologize. I wasn't really planning to make this official tutorial, but I learned so much I really wanted to share with all of you and answer those questions. So at any rate, please forgive the video and the audio quality. This isn't not a normally way we produce here, but if it's your first time, enjoy this. This was an impromptu how to machine quilt, a quilt that had some stabilizer or interfacing in it as well as the batting and the backing. So are you ready? Let's get stitching.
Hey y'all, before we dive into today's tutorial, I gotta tell you about something that has totally rocked my world. Stitchin Heaven quilting cruises. I mean, quilting and cruising, what could be better? For me personally, it's not just about quilting, it's about the people. I've met some of my best friends I could ever ask for on these cruises. And let's not forget the fact that we're cruising the stunning destinations while doing what we love. No other place does that. These cruises have been a game changer for me personally, giving me a place to unwind, connect, and just enjoy the moment. So if you've ever thought about joining in, stop waiting, hit the link below, and come see for yourself. I just know you'll love it. Now let's get back to the tutorial.
Okay, here it is. It's on the long arm, the first pass. I've decided I'm going to trim off the points along the edge, making my life for binding and quilting easier. But it's going pretty well so far. Time to roll it and do some more. Now, I will say it feels like I'm quilting on layers of flannel because of that interfacing inside of it. So there is a bit of a density. I'm not having problems. I have not broken any thread or needles. I shouldn't say that, knock on wood. But you know what I'm saying? So far, so good as far as the quilting goes. But it does feel differently. And I wanted to give you an honest feedback and answer because I've left that interfacing on the insides, right? So it's all in there still. We're mapping out as I go any of the flowers themselves, the little hexy units. This one matches pretty well, but it is still part of it. Then kind of a wide open swirl in each hexy. Secure it, but not give it as much crush as the rest of the project. Before I escape, come back into the center, maybe something a little more fancy, eye-catching, back out along a seam or anywhere you can hide it, pick up the background doodle. This yellow is also part of it. This yellow here is also a hexie, so I'm going to map around it first. This is actually the center of the whole project. It should be something really fancy, which I can't, but I should. Give it that radial from center out look in effect. Don't mind me for bragging super hard to run a long arm and hold your cell phone at the same time. We all try it, but it's not easy. Orange is part of that outer part of the center, and the stitches will show up nicely with this kind of yellowy white neutral thread. So we're going to doctor these edges up real nice too, so you can see the way that the thread shows up. And then into another one of the hexagon units as we go around. Start the mapping. Every time I go to look and see if I'm into the camera, I jerk the machine and jump a bunch of stitches. That's my excuse anyways. Always able to re-outline those hexa units to travel within and out of the project. Back in the background. Keep on rocking and rolling. So here are some of those ripples and puckers up close that I was talking about. And I really feel like, yes, some of it's from the poor patchwork that just comes from being a carefree quilter and doing what I was doing. But yeah, part of it is also the feeding back into the design. So, you know, quilting, like in this area here, I was coming back where I'd already quilted this section and I'd quilted this section. So in filling back in here, what happens is, and that happens with all quilts, but there was less give due to that interfacing, right? The fabric has now basically been stabilized, even though it wasn't ironed to it, right? It wasn't ironed to it, but the edges were. So in essence, that fabric was kind of stabilized. And that was a lot of your concerns when you first saw me building the quilt, is how would I quilt it out? And as I finished this last row, yeah, really happy with the entire process. I will absolutely do this again. I think that even with the quilting issues I've had, I've been more successful than a lot of my quilts. So yeah, let's just keep on trying, keep on pushing and experimenting, and yeah, kind of an impromptu video, but I hope it helped answer some of those questions. I know that a lot of you were concerned what would happen when we got this far, and I've gotten this far. So let me show you what happens for the binding. Of course, once there's no longer leader strips down here, I've got to use my hand to kind of organize tension. And I can see already this is going to kind of be a little bit of a problem as I go through there. So as we just kind of quilt out the end of this together, and again, I'm going to trim out the straight edge right to that mark, but there's no reason I don't want my quilting, like every other quilt, to go off the edge. So I'm just going to use that as I go through to secure. Come back and fill in. Make sure I'm securing my edges completely. But if you work slowly from where it was quilted to where it needs to be quilted, using that other hand to kind of control and help create tension, you'll work through it. Ta-da! Couple extra stitches. And we'll cut thread. Here we are. It's off the long arm, and like I was starting to say, the first thing I've done is I've really tried to clear as much space as possible. I've trimmed down 2 of the sides because you don't need to see me do all 4, but I will show you the other 2 sides because they kind of are going to trim differently. What I did when we first started putting the quilt on the machine, on the frame, remember we did a couple straight lines across the top to hold down the batting and hold down the quilt. I knew the whole time I wasn't going to try to bother putting binding along those edges. That's just more than what I want to get myself into currently. So what I'm going to now do is trim this off using a nice long big ruler. Now I've got the advantage currently because I've already squared up the edge. But that started by the opposite, 180 degrees away from this one. I just went through and I found, and good, it's tracking still, I found a straight line between the hexagons at that center point where I need to trim them off. Now the way, if you haven't seen my other video on the way I do my binding, I stitched the 2.5 inch wide binding strips, press 2 right sides out. Then I go along the back side and I stitch all the way around, prepping the mitered corners, and I bring the finished edge of the binding to the front of the quilt and I finish it by top stitching. So it's all also done by machine, which would be very appropriate for this project. But what I'm trying to say is I'm going to have a decent amount of binding up on the top, 1/4 to 1/2 of an inch, depending on how I prepare myself. So any little bits of batting that show through aren't going to scare me at the moment. I've kicked my blade up to extra durable, extra dense cutting because I have that option on this cutter. So I'm slicing right through all the layers. And now as I slide the project down, I'm looking for 2 visual points. First, I want to have some of my ruler laying along the edge of my quilt. And this is how I trim all of my quilts, is using some of the ruler to keep myself straight. The longer the ruler is along the part you've cut, the more accurate it will remain. Now I'm looking secondly for those points like I found to begin with. And I'm just going to run that cutter through, checking as I go. And then we're going to finish off. Same thing, looking at my cutter, looking at the tips of the parts that are going away. And then I'm just going to cut through the extra bits here. Now, for the other side, we had a little bit different look or shape to it. Right? We add the more of the side points of our hexagons. So again, just prepping everything so that I've got a really nice, flat, clean workspace. Starting on an edge that was created. Now I again have that opportunity to look for square, right? Lining up one of the lines on the ruler. And I'm going to do the same thing. But now this time, you'll notice it's a shorter point that we're cutting off. So if I stay square along the bottom, and I may need to slightly adjust the quilt, and one of the things I want to point out, I probably should have on the first cut, is I'm really looking to make sure if I need to make any adjustments, I'm going to kind of cheat from the beginning so that I don't have to make a big cheat at the end. This is going to give us the perception of a square quilt. Perception. Again, adjusting the body of the work, getting myself a few inches down here, looking at those points. Those points are smaller than before, so that means I'm probably as accurate as before. And of course, folks, this is not the first time I've whittled a quilt down like this. So the more you do, the more confident you become. And now we're approaching this kind of bottom corner where things kind of got away from me on an edge. But as I cut through, you can see that all the way back around, I am running perfectly perpendicular quilt and ruler. Perception. So hopefully that helped. All right, so that's it. That's it for today. The quilt is basically finished. If you don't know how to bind all 4 edges, or maybe I should say 8 edges by machine, please check out my other video. I'll have a link at the end of this one for it. Looks like I've got a little extra fluffing and trimming to do. But yeah, there it is. That's the whole thing squared down, right? Pretty rad. The back, I didn't show you, but I used my 2 different wide backs. It was kind of fun. I didn't have quite enough of either, so I just quilted a back? Huh? Have you ever heard or seen such a thing? And again, this was that wonderful, easiest English paper piecing project ever. Thank you so much for joining me for this impromptu video. I certainly hope it answered some of those questions, and by far, I love the technique and I will do this over and over again, especially as my palette cleanser project, because making the hexagons was so pleasurable when I wasn't working on my other things. So anyways, folks, again, hopefully this series has been awesome for you. I so appreciate you being here. Until I see you next time, please stay well. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end of the video. It really helps support our channel. If you haven't subscribed, do so now. Hit the little button to be notified every time we go live or do a new video for all of you. And here's one from the past I think you'll really enjoy.